Hey guys, welcome back. It's been a few weeks since I put a video up, so I thought I'd put one up today. Just stressing some points that have come up through email and even in the Discord at times. And that's pretty much dealing with pacelines, one, and I've had a couple emails asking me about, again, analyzing my grid when it's all done. And I mentioned before, guys, when this grid is complete, and no matter which grid you're using, you could go two different directions. You could go by using the ratings as the written rule, top, second, third, fourth, and so on, or you could dig a little deeper and analyze in this grid to give you a better idea of the way the race may run and what horses stand out to you in certain parts of the race. And that's what I want to do today. I want to focus a little bit more on the non-rating columns and focus a little bit more on the actual progression, the differential that's going on in between calls. And what I have here is I have Fairgrounds today, January 15th. I have a total of 7 races done. Okay, I looked at races 1 through 8. I tossed one of the races, and then I did not do the finale, race 9. And whether I do that later on, we'll see. But I want to use those races to really focus my points. Now, lately I've been using the Double Pace Pro, which is the double pace lines for each horse, along with the matrix. Okay, and this is in your, if you are a possessor of the progression pace tutorial, then you have this in your grid download. You have the double pace matrix. You have the single pace pro, which is the matrix plus the single pace lines for each horse, which is a little bit quicker. Then you have your simple just progression grids with no matrix, single pace line, double pace line, and triple pace line. But if I stumble across a race that has enough data, and when I say data, I mean enough races that are run at close to today's distance, or I can pull today's distance out of the races, such as the mile. If there's been a lot of mile 16th run, if I could pull the mile out of there, and also horses that have been running on today's surface, and I'm able to get 2 pace lines from every horse, I'll use the double pace line grid, and I've been using the pace plus matrix just to give me 2 different viewpoints for each race. So let's take a look at race 1. And the first thing I want to do is I just want to go over these columns here, okay? The transition from call to call and what they mean to me. All right, what they mean to me is this rating right here, this assessment is based on my read of this grid without taking into account the numbers, the actual numbers themselves, okay? It's more or less looking at the colors. And what this is telling me, if I were doing this assessment right here, it's telling me that off of these pace lines, these 2 pace lines, this 2 horse has run at or against the quickest first calls, okay, with the 100 rating, okay, followed by the 4, the 98. And again, I know I'm going over numbers here, but the colors are telling me that, based on the colors that I use for first, second, third. So if I were to look at this race, I would see in the lead, falling back, okay? And then the other thing I would take into account, if I were to pull that race up off of my PP generator, past performance, is a 6 furlong race. Now, what you may want to do is dig a little deeper and see what the trend was, what's the bias has been. If you go to Equibase and look at the results, where has the winners been coming from these races at these particular distance? So this race here is a 6 furlong race. So I'll put it down here. Just so I can keep in mind that this is a sprint. Okay, these horses are running at a sprint distance. And what I do here is I get my assessment based off what I see in here, in the guts of this grid. And if you notice, I come up with the 1. Well, You might say, well, how'd you come up with the 1? Well, the reason I came up with the 1 is I looked at these two right here. This one horse has the top rating on the turn, okay? In blue, 93, along with the 4 horse, okay? But he also, what does he have over the 4? He also has the best final fraction rating as well. Okay, so you look at these two together, this horse is going to be, despite the fact that he's not going to be there at the first call, okay, he's going to be out. And if you base it on these numbers, and the pace lines I chose were accurate, 193, you're going to look at this horse potentially being 7 lengths out of the lead at the first call, okay, which in this race is the first quarter. So we're looking at a 7 length behind. But at the same time, we're looking at top mover on the turn along with the 4, but then he also has the top move as a final fraction as well, which puts him second overall. So looking at that picture right there, the way it plays out, I put him as my top over there, over top of the 2. Okay? And then the 4. And then the 5. Okay? So that was that. That's how I come up with that particular rating there. Now this rating over here is based solely on who finished top in the final rating, which is the 4, who finished second, who finished third, and who finished fourth. Okay, and it comes out 4152 there. And then this here is the overall, my thorough capping rating using, remember, thorough capping ratings are ratings that are combining different factors together and getting an average. In this case, we're combining the final rating from the pace progression together with the final rating from the matrix side, which I'll get to in a second. And we have the 4 horse coming up on top there as well. So we have the 4, we have the 1, we have the 5, and we have the 2. Okay, so the pace progression side of the grid comes up with the same 4 numbers. The ratings give them the exact same order, and then my little eyeball over here just puts them out of order a little bit. Now, what does that mean? Why? Well, why is that important? Well, because when I rate my top selections, if I'm going to put them on top of an exotic, such as an exactas or tries, I want to know how many I'm going to put on top, and which ones am I going to put on top, and make sure I'm not leaving ones out that belong there. Now, I go over here, and I see that the 3 horse is my target horse with the 80. Okay? And he's also tied for my top matrix, overall matrix rating, which is averaging out all of these ratings here. And I always lean, as I mentioned in pretty much in every video, I always lean toward my target horse, no matter what. And I put him on top. And then we have the final ratings of a 3, 1, 4, and the 5 over here. So when I mix them all together, and I kind of get a consensus in my head, I put the 1 and 4 on top, the 3 in second, and the 2 and the 5. Now this is where the interesting part comes in, because there's been times in the past where I put my grids just like this into the Discord, and I've had people tail and follow along, but I haven't put my wagers in there. I didn't put my ticket structure or what I did, and a race would come up, and all of a sudden the race would hit. Someone would say, thanks, Dave, I got the exacta in that. I got an exacta key box, and here I lost. And they'll say, well, I'll say to them, well, what did you play? They say, well, I put the 5 and the 4 on top of the 1, 2, and the 3 in an exacta, and here the 5 won the race. And the 5 had decent value. It might be 7, 8 to 1 over top of the favor, and this individual gets $35, $40 for the exacta, and I get nothing simply because of the way I played. So, you're at the mercy of a few things when you're handicapping, no matter what you're using. One, the data you're looking at, the pace lines that you're choosing, and in the end, a totally different entity is, how are you playing your tickets? Okay, are you looking at these as the written rule, like I have to use the 4 and the 1 on top because it's showing up so much in 1st and 2nd here? Or are you saying, you know what? I'm going to also play a ticket where I'm going to mix it up a little bit. But again, the more tickets you play, the more you're going to spend. Okay, it all depends on what you want to do to your bankroll. I don't mind going with the 1 and 4 on top over, and all of a sudden losing the race, because I might only lost $12 that race, and I might pick it up in the second race on a hit. Okay, but that's the one thing I wanted to go over here to make sure you understand of how I look at these grids, the pace progression model, because I have a ton of videos out there on the thorough capping, breaking it down, but I don't have too many out there as far as how am I analyzing this grid. And yes, I am looking at final ratings, but I'm also looking at the big picture as well. Okay, do we have too many horses early that are close to each other? Do we have a 100 and a 99.5 and then a 99? That's telling me that those 3 horses are all going to be battling for the front and might wear one another down. And I may take the top out of those 3 who did the best in the second and the third part of the race, and maybe throw him in second and look for that horse that's going to come from behind, not necessarily mean from the back of the pack, but somewhere maybe middle of the pack or wherever, to win that race. And these are the things that point me toward that horse. Okay? So we have a potential speed duel here, 2 lengths off the lead at the first call. Okay? And then we have the 4 horse able to show a little bit better on the turn than the 1 horse. And then the 2 horse, and then the 2 horse off of the 2 pace lines has the actually worst average late fraction. And I don't know if these numbers are enough. I don't know if they separate enough to even have this horse still in the money at the end of this race. So we'll see, and that's why I did not use this horse as a top or second choice. I put him in third overall in my selections. Okay, now when we come to pace lines, choosing pace lines, let's look at Fairgrounds 2, and I'll pull it up on the PP generator. We'll look at the second race. The second race is 5.5 furlongs on the turf. So we're going to look for 2 things. We're going to look for speed, and I'm also going to look for, again, because it's the grass, I'm going to look for horses that are going to come off the pace or somewhat off the pace. Okay, I'm not looking for deep closers here. And again, this is when I'm analyzing that center part of the grid. Now this is a 5.5 furlong race, so let's mark that down, just so we know. I was keeping that in my head before when I was doing my grid analyzing, but now I'll just put it down for you guys. 5.5 furlongs. And we'll mark it there. And let's take a look at the pace lines. How would I decide on the pace lines here after I did my matrix? The first thing I do is I do my matrix ratings by going to my filters here. Options. I go to my fractions. I want to look at the leader's fractions, not my own horse's fractions. And I'm going to turn the incremental times off. These are really the only 2 functions I use when I open up my PP generator. That, and I go and I get the screen size, I turn it to large. Because if you look at it at normal, it's kind of small. So I go screen size, display size large. And I'm going to pull my pace lines. Well, the first pace line I'm going to pull, it's a 5.5 furlong race. And being that I have a recent 5.5 furlong that was run fairly well, okay, I would use that as my first pace line. And then my second pace line, I would reach back and see if I could find another 5.5 on the turf. And here it is right here. That was run fairly well. And if you notice, both of these races reflect this horse's running style. Okay? The E. And the E7 means this horse is even, it emphasizes the early even more, because it focuses on the first call and how many times that horse is on the lead over the course of the last 3 or 4 races, the first and second call. So that horse there, if you look at the grid, this horse here is actually 96.5. So again, it's telling me that this 3 horse actually ran. You might look and say, well, how come he's not the highest then? Well, because you look at the 3 horse here and the pace lines I decided to choose, was the last one out, and he was running against a lot tougher fractions. If you look at his actual incremental first call was a 21.4, where the one horses was actually a 22. Oh no, I'm sorry, a 23. Because I used this race right here. So it's actually 6 seconds, or 6/5, I should say, or 6 lengths faster than this one horse. Okay. So again, this horse still may be in the lead, but at the same time, this horse ran against a quicker first call than the one horse. The 2 horse pacelines, I tossed it. Okay, I tossed this 2 simply because I'm not able to pull any one, turf sprints out of this horse, and 2, nothing at today's distance, 5.5 furlongs or close to it. If there were some 5 furlong races, or even 6 furlong races, and a couple of them were on the turf, I may just pull my data from those races, but I don't have it. Now again, I know there's a theory out there, horses dropping from 2 turns to 1, route to sprinters, and so on. And yeah, this horse could win the race. But at the same time, part of this game is trying to eliminate and seeing who you can, take out of contention as well. And you're at the mercy of that as well. There's so many things you're at the mercy of when you're handicapping. I look at the 3. We already talked about the 3. I would pull the pace line from the first race or the last race out, and then I have a decision to make. And what I did was I went down to the best race, most recent race that was run at 5 furlongs, and I used the 5 furlong numbers. I used first call, second call, and I should go to the horses fractions. Incremental times on. 22 and 1, 23 and 1, and then the 12 and 2. And I used 12 as my standard 100, so that would be 2 off. That would have been a 98 for the final fraction there. Okay? So again, when you're choosing your pace lines, I always try to keep one recent and reach back to the best, most recent race that I could find. So for example, if I used one up here, if I used this first race, the 5 furlong race, and I wanted to find my second pace line, if this race here was a dud, I would go further back and see if I could use something from back here. But yet I try to stay within the year. Okay, we're in 2024 right now, but horse racing wise, I still consider it 23, especially when I see something in December and November, somewhat close. I still consider it within, obviously, because it is within this year. Okay, anything back to January 15th of 23 would be within this year. So anything April or May to now would still be within the 6 months, even though the number is a 24 now instead of a 23, and so on. So let's take a look here before I start rambling, because again, none of my videos are really scripted. I kind of just go on a whim here. We'll look at the 2. What I have here, my top selections. I went with the progression side because we had so much going on over on this side with the matrix side. I went with the progression side to pull my top 2 plays. The 4 and the 8. Okay. The 4 coming off of the final ratings, final TC rating, and the 8 coming off of the just the eyeball of being right there on the lead, moving on the turn, making a better move on the turn, even though it's only by a half a length, and then finishing, because also we're looking at 2 speed horses here. Okay, we're looking at the 3 and the 6, who both might battle each other early, causing one of these horses, which I would guess would be the 6 to fall out, because the 6 shows me nothing. I don't want to say nothing, but not enough the rest of the way, where the 3 horse shows me something. Okay, so I come out with 4, 8, 1, 3, 5 as my top. Now, how am I betting them? I'm going to use the 4, 8 on top. The reason why I'm listing so many horses is because If you're playing exotics, I want to know which horses I'm going to include in the second, third leg of tries and superfectas and so on. Race number 3, it's pretty much a consensus across the board here. The 2617, 2617, and then in the ratings here, just flip to 7, and the 267. I only have 4 horses. I eliminated most of the field, so there's only 4 horses here. And let's take a look on why I eliminated all those horses. This is a 5.5 furlong. I think I eliminated this just basically off of recent form. He is dropping in class, but at the same time, if I were to plot this horse on the grid, it's not going to give me much anyway. But he is a class dropper, something to keep in mind. 2, I included the 2. The 5, same thing. Tossed based on recent form. Running at the same class level today. I used the 6. Tossed the 5 again. Recent form. Terrible. And then I included the 7. And I actually tossed the 8 as well, even though the 8's 9-2 morning line, which means nothing to me. Race 4, 3529, 5329, matrix side, 2479, 2794, 2397. And so what I did was I put the 2 on top, the 3 and the 5, second place, and the 7 and the 9 as also eligibles there. And as I mentioned many times, if I see a horse somewhere, let's say right there, 3 or the 5 at very enticing odds, I'm going to put something to win on that horse. I'm not going to go and treat this like this is by the book, like the 2 is definitely going to win this race. Obviously, that's not, that wouldn't be realistic there. The 5th race, 1753, 1573 on the matrix side. 5832, 5731, 5731. So we do see some similarities here. And then when I eyeball the grid, that's where I come up contrarian a little bit, even though the 5 horse does figure for me here as well. So the 5 is going to be one of my top plays along with the 1 horse who's dominating the matrix side of the grid. I got 1, 5, 7, 3, and 2. Fairgrounds 6. What I'm going to do is I'm going to shorten this video, and I'm just going to leave it on here for a second so you can pause. And that way, if you want to write these down and follow along today and see how they go. The 7th I skipped. Here's the 8th. And this is the last one I did. And as you can see, you got the 1 dominating. 4 of the 5 assessments here. And I even have them second in the eyeball. Alright, so hopefully these grids hold up today at Fairgrounds. And if you're not a subscriber, I shouldn't say subscriber. If you do not own the pace progression tutorial, there is a link for the download in the description of this video. And if you're not a member of our Discord, please click the new invite link that I put in the description here as well, and join our Discord. Even if you kind of just observe from the outside and you're not an active poster, it's okay with that. I'm okay with that as well. All right, thanks for tuning in. I'll talk to you soon.